Well, it's been a year since the beginning of this pandemic. Almost 365 days since the world shut down. We felt like it was helpful to take a moment to reflect on all that we've learned. I think healthy churches are often learning communities that take stock of the moment, look at what they've done, reflect on what they could have done better, but always trying to learn more and to be adaptive to God's call to mission. And that's where we find ourselves today, a year later, and we thought it might be helpful to kind of take a moment to think about all the ways that we've reframed what has been quite a challenging year and made it an opportunity, the ways we've made opportunities from challenges. And so I was thinking how to have structured this conversation, and it dawned on me that our yard signs we made back in 2018 might be a helpful way of reflecting on 2020 and 2021. Early in the pandemic, I stood out on my lawn and I picked up the sign and said, "Look, our walls can't contain us. That's why I love St. Luke's." This pandemic has forced us into this moment. And I think that's very, very true, that in this moment we've been forced to adapt and to find new ways to be ourselves. But these yard signs, these sayings that we created for our yard signs, were really values at the core of what St. Luke's is and who we are. You might remember the first one I've already said is, "Our walls can't contain us." This one says, "I love St. Luke's because tradition is alive."
And of course, we have more yard signs. I love this one, that I love St. Luke's because we foster childlike joy and wonder. And this one, I love St. Luke's because we live the hard questions.
There's a fifth sign that we don't have any more of because they're in your yards. I love St. Luke's because all are welcome. We thought we would use these sayings, and they're not just slogans, but there are value statements about who we are and the mission we're called to, and reflect on kind of all the work we've done this last year, especially by using the amazing technology of video to offer different opportunities and different ways of being church. So I gathered Jessica to come with me today, and as an opportunity for us to kind of think about this. Jessica has been very influential in helping put together these services each week, along with our other faithful staff members, Ron McIntyre, Kim Mann, and Kathy Smith, who's always been so gung-ho to learn and adapt and figure out this weird medium of how to talk to people through a camera. But I thought I'd open up by having Jessica talk to us about one of her signs and some of the things that are there.
Sure. You know, and one of the things that's struck me during this project of doing pre-recorded videos is that it's very much a conversation. So we're having a conversation here, and also throughout the pandemic as we've been asking parishioners to get involved in the services. It's part of an ongoing conversation. Liturgy, the meaning of the word liturgy is the work of the people, and certainly that's what these videos have become. So this first sign, "We foster childlike joy and wonder," was really at the heart of the beginning of our pre-recorded worship ministry. If you remember, as everything was shutting down, our very first pre-recorded worship service was Mr. Rogers. Why don't we watch a clip from a little bit of that service?
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in the beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty.
As the Children, Youth, and Families Minister here at St. Luke's, we had to adapt our faith formation for children to a video format. So we got creative in how to tell the story of our faith through video. one of the family chapel lessons that I most enjoyed recording was Trinity Sunday, when I was a detective and trying to figure out the mystery of the Trinity. Let's watch a little clip of that.
This is Phi J. Frederick here, and I am on a top secret mission to discover the mystery of the Trinity.
Also, another way that we tried to connect with childlike joy and wonder is by engaging with the children and youth in creative ways. So in the next clip, we asked a family from our partners at Grace Church to engage in the story of Epiphany and the gifts that the wise men brought, particularly incense, and gave Kaylin and Clayton Brown the opportunity to actually get up close and experience the senses of incense, which was one of the gifts that the kings brought to the baby Jesus. So that was the way in which we fostered childlike joy and wonder through these pre-recorded worship videos. And, you know, since this is a conversation, I'm going to pass it back to Luke to talk about our next sign.
Tradition is alive. I think this has been one of the most difficult moments in this pandemic. How to keep tradition alive when the normal ways of doing things have been upended and the carpet's been pulled out from under our feet. How do we keep our worship traditional while at the same time realizing that a call and response liturgy in robes with candles and in a echoey space wasn't going to work? And so we came up with some different ideas how to make tradition alive. So we really worked to find ways to keep tradition alive here in this strange moment. You may remember early on in our worshiping together in this way that we found a way to keep the confession, something that's so traditional, active and always adaptive to our current moments, and to make that fresh and new. And each week, Deacon Kathy has found a way to break the confession open so that it might grab us, hold of us in a new way. We'll watch a clip of a couple of those iterations right now.
Sometimes it seems like we live in a dark world. Today's gospel talks about an awkward party, and it reminded me of planning my wedding with Matt. I wonder why we use the word lemon as something bad. Just practicing using my nifty little address stamp.
Another way that we kept tradition alive was to go back even to a tradition that we didn't quite, could never quite figure out how to do here at St. Luke's. There's a great tradition in the church of Rogation Sunday, a Sunday when you go out to the bounds of the parish to bring God's blessing and to remind us that God's present everywhere along the blessing and ask for a year of growth. With the power of video and phones and the ability for people to self-record, we were able to celebrate Rogation Sunday in a new way by inviting folks from all around the parish to record themselves walking on a spring day back in May. We even had folks join us from Florida, Jack and Wilma. And here's a little clips of some of those. Similarly, we found other traditions to adopt here at St. Luke's. There's a tradition in the church that the first Sunday after Easter is a Holy Humor Sunday. this is because, of course, we're laughing at the great trick that Jesus played on the forces of evil and the evil one by descending to hell just to release everyone else from their imprisonment. So we found a way, this being the home of the National Comedy Center here in Jamestown, we thought, what a better way to bring humor into our services. And we had folks join us from various humorous moments in their daily lives to join us, like Dana and Lonnie in this clip.
As Luke asked us to be. And we're here to celebrate the gift of the empty nest. When our three children, Caroline, Kyle, and Hannah, first left home, it was a hard transition for us. One of us perhaps more than the other.
And now we've learned to adjust. Empty nesting has become quite nice.
Quite nice.
One of the great traditions of the Episcopal Church is one of our great taglines, which is what, Jessica?
All are welcome. And throughout the last year, we've explored ways of being expansive in our worship services. For example, in June, we celebrated our first ever Pride Sunday, which we had initially planned to do here in church, in person. And then, of course, the pandemic came and blew everything up for those plans, but we adapted, and we made a pre-recorded Pride Sunday service. Let's have a watch. The other thing that we believe in strongly here at St. Luke's, that all are welcome, is that the youth of our church are not only the future of the church, but the present of the church. And we have a tradition here of Youth Sunday at the end of April. And our youth group had been working hard at developing a service for Youth Sunday. Again, we had planned it in person, and we adapted and moved it to pre-recorded video and had Youth Sunday online. The other thing is that this was our first Youth Sunday that broadened the inclusion of Youth Sunday to include our friends and partners at First Presbyterian Church, which is the church that we're in partnership with our youth group. So the two churches share one youth group, and we share leadership between the two. So let's have a watch.
And they've been hard at work doing those very things, reflecting the love of our Creator God in their own artwork and filming and creativity and imagination.
And action. Some good news is not yet! Sorry! Anyway, some good news is that I have a lot more time to shoot video and edit it together.
And here's some good news. The sun's out and it's getting warmer, so I can finally go back outside and play soccer more.
Bananas in pajamas are coming down the stairs. Bananas in pajamas are coming down in pairs. Bananas in pajamas are chasing teddy bears. 'Cause on Tuesdays they all try to catch them unawares.
Here's some good news. During the quarantine, I learned how to do this.
Finally, in August, we were proud to have celebrate a Recovery Sunday service in the way that there is no one who is excluded from God's loving embrace. And the reality is that all people are in recovery in some form or another, that we're all held in bondage to all kinds of addictions or habits or behaviors that are unhealthy. So we came together as a community to celebrate recovery, remind ourselves of this ongoing goal for and striving for greater health, while also remembering and memorializing all those who have died from addictions.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to St. Luke's Church. It's an honor to be able to talk to you all today. I am Stephen Cobb, and I wear many hats here today at St. Luke's. I'm a member of St. Luke's. I'm a member of the vestry, and when we can sing, I sing in the choir. And I'm the executive director of the Mental Health Association. And at St. Luke's invitation, the MHA has partnered here for this service of recovery and remembrance of life lost. But maybe today you can put aside all those titles and roles and for just a minute, look at me as an overdose survivor.
Let us name before God those whom we offer our prayers, remembering those who have died from overdoses from August 31st, 2019 to August 31st, 2020, here in Chautauqua County. John Jengo, Catherine Bacon, Jesse.
And I'm the seminarian. I think I'm going to hand the hard questions over to Luke.
Gee, thanks, Jessica. Well, I guess the buck stops here, as they say. We live the hard questions. This is one of my favorite signs we created a couple years ago because it is positive, a positive statement of our willingness to engage in things that are difficult. Often you hear in the Episcopal Church that you don't have to check your brain at the door. I don't like that statement because it can be dismissive of other traditions, and it's kind of elitist. This, we live the hard questions, means that we roll up our sleeves and get busy with the work even when we don't know the answers, when we kind of have to struggle amidst our confusion to come together and to work on it together, to look for God's inspiration to illumine our hearts and our minds so that we can work together. This has been a difficult year in so many ways. We've seen how our mental health isn't as supple and as strong as it might be, and I think that's something that our community needs to work on for certain. We've also seen just how alone we really are. We've seen the great inequity in our society. And as we've looked at that, we've realized that a lot of this inequity happens along racial lines, that so many of our friends of people of color are the ones who are left outside. It makes us pause and think about life here at church. When I look around at the stained glass windows and see predominantly white figures, how does that make someone feel walking into our space? We've struggled to make sense of this, and we still have a lot of work to do, but we are committed to living these hard questions. And of course, on Trinity Sunday, in this great complex moment, we encouraged folks in the midst of struggle to engage in the dance of hard questions, into the question of how do we ensure that the Black Lives Matters in a way that helps us to really be kind and caring. And in a contentious reality where we often don't agree on the facts of our civil life together, we at St. Luke's have tried to live the hard questions, to embrace the gospel call, to live beyond the labels of Republican or Democrat or any political party, and realize that we're called to live out the kingdom values. And that means, of course, sometimes disagreeing. It means sometimes standing for truth. And it means sometimes being curious about why someone else might believe something different than we do, or have a different idea of how we run our country. We tried to playfully do that after the election by engaging in some wonderings as we began this entry into Advent about the end of the world when we had this clip. As you've noticed, there isn't a whole lot of footage to show with this sign, "We live the hard questions," because if we had footage, it would assume that we had the answer, and we don't have the answer. All we have is the struggle to understand and the will to work to live these hard questions. And I think what we've realized as we've lived these hard questions is that the way we've done church, with walls that keep folks out and sometimes make this feel like a building that's there just for our purposes, isn't good enough. The walls really can't contain us here at St. Luke's or the work that God is doing in and through us. There are so many ways in which living the hard questions takes us out into the world, takes you out into the world, allows you to use your lives here at Grace at Church and at St. Luke's Church as well. Really, that's one of the things we discovered in this pandemic, that we can't do it alone. This partnership that's emerged between Grace Church and St. Luke's Church is an instance where our walls can't contain us. And of course, it's also literally true. We've had to find all kinds of ways to do church outside these walls, especially in the beginning part of the year. You'll remember on Palm Sunday, we went on procession with some donkeys. You'll remember that on the baptism of our Lord, we went out into the wilderness and did a polar plunge.
Amen! 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 That's for the Spirit.
And on Pentecost, we found ways of using people's gifts and going into their homes, like when Sharon Drennan cooked us that beautiful red velvet cake to celebrate Pentecost. Boy, was it tasty.
Wow, this cake looks amazing. Thank you, Sharon. This is fantastic. Oh, it smells great too. I have to try it. Is it okay? You don't all mind, do you? I have to see how good this cake is. That's fantastic. And of course, it's red because the color of Pentecost is red. Hey, I want some. Who is that? What are you doing here? What are you doing here?
Even before the pandemic kicked us out and we had to realize that the walls couldn't contain us because we weren't allowed in the building, we had plans about what we'd hope to do in the growing season, and the plans for the numbers of church attendance, plans for making our liturgy even better by helping it have greater intentionality, that each service would have a theme of sorts that would allow us to dig deeper into the scriptures and connecting those scriptures to our lives. The funny thing is that this pandemic forced us to do just that, to get more intentional about our work, to slow down, as it were, and pay attention to the human elements that are always at work, to come up with a theme that might connect us a bit to the stories in our own lives. And it's been just that. We've had to learn how to tell stories in a creative fashion that connects with people's stories and by bringing people into the story themselves. And that has pushed us to be better with our liturgy. It's also taught us how to learn and to grow in ways that we couldn't imagine. Isn't that right, Jess?
It's so true. I've been joking so much the last year that, you know, as I've been learning videography, which has been entirely out of my wheelhouse, that I haven't taken this class in seminary yet. I don't really know what I'm doing. And it's funny because I look back on the last year and I've seen some of the clips that my husband helped me record at home. And they're sweet in a way because I can look at them now and be like, oh, that framing wasn't just right. And yet and I wouldn't make the same choice again now I would probably be a little more intentional about, where I placed the camera or where I stood or sat or my lighting. And part of learning and growing and also back to the question of living the hard questions is acknowledging the things that maybe we haven't done well or the things that are still opportunities for growth. Throughout all of this, though, I've been really proud of the work we've been doing as a community in creating these pre-recorded worship videos. One of the things that I'm always thinking about is it assumes that everyone in the congregation that we want to connect with has internet access or the technical capability to engage in the services in this way. And that simply isn't true. And so there are parts of our community that we've not been able to connect with particularly well. And over the course of the last year, we've been asking ourselves the question of how can we do that better? How can we create a more interwoven community where all are truly welcome and included regardless of technical or technical capabilities or financial resources? How do we create a thick web of relationships that connects us all? And that's an area of learning and growth that we still, I think, have a lot of work to do. And that's the neat thing after a year of reflection. The work isn't really over. There's always more to do. Isn't that right, Luke?
Spot on. The work always finds us. I've often said that in the church, we don't get to retire. We are always called to do new work. God is continually working in our lives and pushing us on to those uncomfortable and yet the places where we are most prone to growth. And it's a gift. It's a gift that sometimes we wish we couldn't receive or didn't have to receive. But I think it's if we pay attention and reframe and maybe change the lens a little bit, we see that it's only our obligation that holds us back, our sense of shame and weightiness that makes it difficult for us to properly learn and grow. And I think that's where we are in this moment. As we conclude this year, we open up a new opportunity for a whole new year where God might show us more growth in ways that will stretch us as well. I'm so grateful for the folks here at St. Luke's and Grace Episcopal Churches that are committed to growing and finding new ways through our struggle and our sometimes competence in these amazing ways. Thank you for being part of this, and I hope as we begin a new year, you find some hope in the midst of where we're at. Our faith is always an and yet faith. This has happened, and yet God will continue to provide the answers that we need to these hard questions that we continue to live. God will continue to shelter us as we leave our walls. God will find us and surround us in community, and we can live in the shelter of the shadow of the other. We can be sure that tradition will live on as we actively grab hold of it and make it alive again. We can do all of that with childlike wonder and joy, because the diversity of all coming and making themselves, and us making them welcome, is the work the church is called to. That's what we're called to do. Thank you for being part of this.